So initially, this video was going to be about a game called Bug Fables. After browsing Steam though, I discovered a little game that's been under my radar for a while was 70% off, and it was the deluxe edition no less. That game was the world's first brainpunk-style action RPG, Scarlet Nexus. I thought it looked cool from its initial trailer, but with me lacking a PS5 and Series X, there was no way I'd actually be able to play it, so I didn't follow it much after. With me having a gaming computer for editing my videos now though, I can actually play it. To be honest, I'm glad these reviews require a computer this strong to make, cause honestly, 2-ish years in, and I'm not sold on the PS5 yet. It has very few exclusives on it, and is way too bulky for my tastes. That being said though, after a year of waiting for me, it's time to finally check out Scarlet Nexus. Let's get started. Welcome to the world of Scarlet Nexus, a place where 99% of the population has a psychic power of some kind, and outside the city walls are abstract abominations that have a hankering for human brains. Beings called Others appeared 2,000 years ago and are infinitely created from the Extinction Belt, a strange unknown anomaly in the sky. To combat them, the OSF, or Other Suppression Force, was created to train and bring the strongest out of people with psychic powers to combat them. The story of Scarlet Nexus is told from the perspective of two new OSF cadets, Yuito Sumeragi and Kasane Randall, with each of their campaigns telling one side of the overall story. Without spoiling anything for those who haven't played the game yet, and that's pretty easy to do to be honest, you really should start with Yuito's campaign. The fun of his story is the mystery of what's going on and why, and you get the answers to that pretty early on in Kasane's story. To be honest, I don't think I like that this kind of story is told this way. Yes, you can do them in either order, but if I did Kasane's story first, I can imagine I'd probably get pretty bored of Yuito's since I'd already know what's going on. I almost think they should have required you to play Yuito's first, and then Kasane's to wrap up any loose ends the former story didn't. But hey, that's just my thoughts on it. If you've played the game before, let me know if you disagree with me on the play order down below. I'd be interested to hear why. Chances are though, you're probably not playing this game for primarily its story. No, you play a game like this for its combat, and Scarlet Nexus doesn't fail to deliver on some incredibly fun and very unique gameplay. Combat in Scarlet Nexus starts out simple enough. Yuito and Kasane can perform a simple 3-hit combo that can later be upgraded, and a special attack with the Y button. For Yuito, it's a hard-hitting wide slash with his katana, and for Kasane, it's an attack that follows up with a backstep to get out of dodge when performing a combo. For Kasane, this is pretty great to have though, since compared to Yuito, she's kind of frail. The biggest draw to Scarlet Nexus's gameplay though is our protagonist's psychokinesis and the SAS system, and this is where we get to the good stuff. During combat, your basic melee attacks and special attack will charge your psi gauge, the meter that lets Yuito and Kasane use their psychokinesis. At any point during a fight, and even mid-combo, you can hold down the right trigger to start readying a nearby object to throw at another. You'll be throwing everything from bicycles to even cars, and in some cases you can even perform special attacks with certain objects in the environment to either do a crap ton of damage or give them a status ailment. Hitting another with these psychic attacks is incredibly satisfying, and they all have a nice punch to them. Eventually, as you go through the game, you'll also unlock 2 powered-up states for combat. The first one you get, Brain Drive, is a buffed-up state that raises your attack speed and other stats while also giving you an experience multiplier that can be increased by doing a number of different things like killing enemies. You build up the gauge for Brain Drive by attacking enemies with your various abilities, and by performing a Brain Crush, which is basically a finisher you can perform on another after draining their crush gauge. The one problem I have with it though is the lack of control for when it triggers. Once that gauge is filled, you're brain driving whether you want to or not, and me personally, I wish I could choose when I wanted to use it. The second powered up state you unlock is the Brain Field, a state that supercharges Yuito and Kasane's psychokinesis and prevents the use of SAS. Oh, it also makes them go the teensiest bit insane. Brain Fields do have a catch though. All the extra damage you do is balanced out by the Brain Field's time limit. When that clock reaches 0, you'll be inflicted with a little status ailment we call death. Yeah, the idea here is that sustained use of Brain Field is super dangerous for the brain, which is both why you go insane and why it kills you. The Brain Fields are a great way for dealing with bigger groups of tanky enemies, but generally I didn't need to use it too much. Not that that's a bad thing. One of the best aspects of Scarlet Nexus's combat though is the SAS system. Using SAS, Yuito and Kasane can borrow the powers of their other teammates for battle. You can add fire or electricity to your attacks with Hanabi or Shiden's powers for some bonus damage. Or if you need to get out of a jam, Yuito has Luca's teleportation, and Kasane has Kagero's invisibility and Arashi's hypervelocity. The two I used the least though was the joint psychokinesis Kasane or Yuito have with each other, and Gemma's sclerokinesis. The former supercharges the playable character's power to throw everything around you at the target for one strong attack. Gemma's power nullifies all damage coming at you, so it's effectively a guard. The former's issue is the fact that I didn't find many opportunities where I needed to use it. The latter's issue is that dodging is usually a more effective strategy for avoiding damage, especially with Luca's teleportation and Arashi's hypervelocity. By the way, as a quick tip, when playing as Kasane, make a beeline for the concurrent SAS skill on her brain map. The reason being that one thing of this allows you to use two SAS abilities at the same time. The reason I specified Kasane is because she gets access to duplication way earlier than what Yuito does, and combining that with Shiden's electrokinesis is incredibly fun. Like, look at this, I'm fighting the love child of a crocodile and modern piece of art with psychically manipulated daggers. All the while I have a shadow clone that's doing exactly the same thing. Meanwhile, I'm tossing a card him that I also duplicated for extra card chuckage, and everything I just did was charged with lightning. This is not a combination of abilities I ever expected to use in a game before, and yet here we are. Yeah, if I didn't make this clear enough, Kasane's my favorite of the two to control for how agile her moveset is and how good her kit is for the bulk of her campaign. I almost think it's a little OP with her having access to two incredible offensive abilities in duplication and electrokinesis, but also because hypervelocity heavily slows down time for everything but Kasane, allowing you, the player, to go ham on any other that happens to cross your path. Now, before I get into the parts of combat that involve your team, I want to briefly touch on the game's main bad guys, the Others. Honestly, I really like the look of these guys. They feel like these weird mishmashed abominations that shouldn't exist and yet somehow do anyway. I can see why they might be a little too weird looking for some people, but me personally, I love how strange they look. It helps them feel really unique. Ironically enough though, they do suffer from a lack of variety by the end. In the late parts of the game, they reuse a lot of different body types for enemies. I can't help but wish there were more of these guys, because I feel you could make some really creative looking enemies with them. When you're not fighting in the field, you'll be chilling out in your hideout with the team. Here you can give them gifts to build up your relationship with them, and when your bond levels up, you'll get an upgrade to their SAS ability, or even unlock 3 different types of visions with them. You have Guardian Visions, where they'll block an attack for you, Combo Visions, where you can trigger an attack with them to deal extra damage to an other's crush gauge, should their SAS gauge be at 60%, and finally, we have Assault Visions, where after an enemy's knocked down or afflicted with a status ailment, you can trigger a hard-hitting attack with a teammate. I love how the bond system makes you feel more like a team with these people. It doesn't just feel like a buff for your abilities, it's also you growing as a team with other members of the party, and the various visions you unlock help reflect that in gameplay. Then we have the bonding episodes, and while I do like these, I have 2 issues with them. First is the fact that in any cutscene in the game, you always have this prompt for photo mode up. You would think you could turn this off, but no, there's no option for it in the menu, so you have to deal with this distraction the entire game. The other bigger issue for me is how the Bond episodes in like 90% of the cutscenes are presented. You see, nearly all of them are presented kind of like a comic book. Used sparingly, this would be fine, but like I said, most of them are like this, and for me, it's a little difficult to be engaged in what's happening on screen when it's all a static image. Aside from that though, I like these. Because you have 2 different sets of episodes per playable character, it lets you see a lot of different sides to your teammates. With the exception of Shiden, I do really like all of these guys, but don't go into this game expecting to be blown away by them or anything. By the way, I love that you can see the gifts you're given the other characters decorate the hideout. It's a really nice little touch. While you're in the hideout though, you can also take part in challenge missions for a chance at getting some extra materials to exchange at the shop, and to test your skills for a good ranking, and honestly, I think you get these a bit too early. By the point in the game you unlock them, your easiest mission has level 40 enemies, and the weakest boss refight is at level 70. So while these are fun, you won't be too well equipped for them until about phase 8 of any character's story. And on the subject of the story though, now's about time I delve into some spoilers. So if you haven't played the game yet, and care about spoilers, skip to here or click the link in the description to head to the last chapter. With the warning out of the way, let's get into this, because the plot of Scarlet Nexus is, interesting. Let me start this off by saying that I think Scarlet Nexus does have some good elements to its story, and even has some great twists. The problem is that I think the game's pacing and structure hold it back a little. The story, as mentioned before, consists of 2 separate campaigns, with our protagonists Yuito and Kasane, and each one will take you around 20 to 25 hours. I can't help but feel like they should be longer though, because I feel the pacing for the story is a little too fast for me. Things progressed so quickly, I found myself saying, okay, this whole thing with the moon colony and the Kunad Gate is genuinely interesting, but how did we go from government rebellion to this? This is where my problem with the twin perspective nature of the game kicks in. See, in Kasane's campaign, the world ending point of the story feels more natural since it's set up better in comparison to Yuito's. But if you're playing his first, you might find yourself experiencing a little bit of whiplash from the sudden shift in direction. My other issue with this way of telling the story is that I feel like playing Kasane's first would take some fun out of experiencing Yuito's story, since the enjoyment from his perspective is the fact that you, the player, are just as in the dark as he is. Like I said though, there is a good amount of stuff to like about the story. The stuff about the aforementioned moon colony is pretty interesting since it took the story in a direction I wasn't at all expecting. The whole twist that the others are basically any living thing that came into contact with these weird cosmic particles is also pretty cool since that leaves a good mystery about where these other particles came from and how they even work in the first place beyond what we already know. I like what its narrative had to offer, but I do hope they take notes and improve on what they already have here, because I think the team who made this game managed to create a pretty unique and interesting world. Scarlet Nexus is a pretty good time. Combat is fun and incredibly satisfying, and despite its issues, the story builds a pretty interesting world. It'll definitely be a while before we see it, but I'm pretty excited for whenever this game gets a sequel, because this is a pretty good first start for a new IP, and it only has room to grow. The video I'll be doing on Bug Fables next time, though, will be the last RPG I talk about for a little bit, since I've talked about primarily role-playing games for like the last 10, 11-ish videos now, and I need at least 3 or 4 videos that aren't on that. I've got a couple of games I've wanted to talk about for a while now, so expect that after Bug Fables, but until then, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a nice day.